Well, we're now joined by Ambassador Chiedu Osakwe, who is the trade advisor to the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much indeed.
Well, you have been, I'm sure you witnessed the President's presentation of the budget, if not physically, at least you witnessed it on television, I'm sure.
Partly, yes.
And I'm sure you've heard some of the analysis trailing the budget. There are fears that some of the assumptions in that budget might not be realistic. What are your immediate thoughts on that?
Naturally, there are concerns on every budget in any country in the world. But I think that the process of formulating the budget has been competently done. The Minister of Finance, Kemi Adelsu, and the Minister of Budget and National Planning, Senator Odama, have done a pretty good job. All the stakeholders were involved. Our ministry, the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, was involved as well. A lot of this also happened under the disciplined oversight of the chairman of the economic management team, our vice president, Professor Yemi Oshinbanjo. Due process was undertaken with regard to the budget. Now, the budgets are made on the basis of assumptions, and so this has to be worked through in the process of implementation. But I think the message to Nigerians is that due process was followed in formulating the budget. Assumptions are realistic. It was technically, expertly, competently done. Now we'll have to wait and see what the reactions would be and hope for the good partnerships that will be entailed with the private sector, with multilaterals, with the global economic community, as well as with domestic stakeholders. It's not really formulaic. Budgets are what they are, they're estimates. The important thing to be certain of is that the process was technical, competently done, not politicized, and I think that you have a good solid product on the table. Now we have to wait and see and hope that implementation would also be equally competent, and this will be a responsibility.
Implementation is still a long way away. I mean, considering that this budget is still a proposal. It's not been passed by the National Assembly. It's not even been debated by the National Assembly. Yesterday, the Minister of Budget and National Planning held a breakdown. I think he hosted the breakdown, which was attended yesterday, 2 days ago, I believe, which was attended by some other ministers to talk about some of the assumptions. But also yesterday, Channels Television had a meeting with a roundtable with chief scholars where this budget was discussed into two. Some of them were quite optimistic that the budget will, will achieve what it set out to do. Others were not so optimistic considering some of the assumptions. For them, the only correct assumption there, the only assumption which they think is safe, is the benchmark price of crude oil. They're a little worried about the GDP. They're worried about the rate of forex, considering how many rates of forex, for instance, are there in the market as we speak.
Well, you're absolutely right. You know that famous expression by the United States president, can you please find me a one-handed economist? I don't need two-handed economists. On the one hand this, on the other hand that. But it's the nature of the dismal science. It's the nature of economics. It's not a science. Lots of things that go on in budgets are based on assumptions. Sometimes they're realistic, sometimes they are unrealistic. Remember in 2014, which is why we are in this current economic circumstance, there was an exogenous shock to the system. Lots of things that should have been done over more than a generation in the Nigerian economy to rebalance, to diversify, to create buffers for what happened in 2014 was not done. But the economic policymakers are not now looking backwards. We are looking forwards. And here again, you are right in describing the spectrum of views and assessments that now are associated with the appropriation bill on the table. What I would say on that is that what the media, like Channels Television, is doing to keep this on the front burner, on the radar of public opinion, of experts, is the right thing to do. It isn't a science. And so you have to keep at it, continue with the dialogue, the Q&A, but from my perspective, you have competent economic managers in government. I know what Senator Udoma went through to get a proper process of diligence and due process on the budget. All the scholars, the leading economists in this country were involved. I participated at several of those meetings. And so there is a good product on the table. You're right, it hasn't been passed. There's still scope for comments, but there is a good product. And now we have to wait for the National Assembly to do its own part and then wait for it to be passed. And then implementation would follow. And there will be adjustments in the course of the year. Remember, in the implementation of budgets, their implementation is not limited to what happens in the domestic economy. You have to take account of developments in the regional economy and the continental economy, and in an uncertain global economy where growth is weak and there rapid and dynamic economic transformation. So there's a lot of interactivity that will take place, but keep it on the front burner. Keep up with the dialogue and the Q&A, and let those with good ideas and sound ideas and better solutions come up. And this isn't a defensive statement by any measure.
I was just going to ask you, because one of the things that this administration has said they were going to do was this zero budgeting system. For a lot of people, the 2016 budget did not reflect that. They felt that we had gone with the envelope system, which was what had been in place for some time. The 2017 budget, you talk about a lot of work going into it. You talk about due process, following due process, painstakingly, as it were. Are we following the zero-based budgeting, or did we just add on to figures that we had from 2016?
Well, the Nigerian economy is in recession. To deal with a recession, there are basically two approaches. You have to look at the fundamentals of the economy at any point in time. Look at the basic macroeconomic indicators. What is the level of inflation? Obviously, the growth rate is negative. We are in the second or third quarter of successive negative growth rate. In this circumstance of having suffered the economy an exogenous shock, you have to reboot. Rebooting would entail spending. A lot of it will be deficit spending, injecting cash, including through cash transfers into the economy, putting money in the hands of the consumers, in the hands of Nigerians.
That's acceptable. I mean, what I'm saying is, what method was used in this process? Did we adopt the zero-based budgeting, which the federal government has always said they were going to adopt, or did we just do the envelope system?
It's not either or. It isn't either a question of zero growth budgeting. It's impossible to have a zero growth budget in the context of a recession. That is currently ruled out. I'm not exactly sure of what you refer to in terms of an envelope, but basically you have a system of the allocation of resources, deficit financing, floating bonds, you're well aware of that, and putting as much money as possible into the hands of consumers. There is there are connotations with the idea that you have put on the table with regard to envelopes.